In this lesson of constructions, we're going to be looking at how to construct different quadrilateral figures from certain preset items. Our first is going to be a parallelogram, given these two side lengths shown. And the characteristic of a parallelogram that we're going to have to pay the most attention to here is the fact that the opposing lines are parallel and opposite side lengths are also congruent. So to do this, I'm going to start by constructing a line. So just pick out a couple of points, make my line. From that, I'm going to add in a ray in order to give direction and guidance. So that's going to create the angle that will be on my parallelogram. Next, I need to figure out that side length. So I'm going to grab my compass and come up and grab on to section 1 here. And then bring it on down and reconstruct that angle or that side length here on the side. Once I have that impacted in there, I'm going to drop a point for reference on it in order to act as the side length. So EH is now congruent to AB. Next, I'm going to reconstruct this angle that is shown. And again, to reconstruct an angle, I set my point, draw an arc, go up to the place I want to reconstruct the angle at, and draw an arc as well. Then measure the distance between the two contact points of the first arc, and then put that same distance on the second. So now I'm going to draw a ray through these points, and I have a line that is parallel to my first one. Now I can start working on lengths. So if I reconstruct length CD as such on both of the sides that are parallel, then all I have to do is connect those last 2 points of intersection here and here, and what I end up with is a parallelogram with opposing sides being congruent and those all being congruent to what I had originally started with. So this is what we do for a parallelogram. What if I want to be more specific and recreate a rhombus? So for my rhombus, I'm going to start from the same system, a line with a ray coming off of it to create the angle, and then I have to choose which side length do I want to use. So let's say I use side length CD. So I'm going to grab my compass and reconstruct that. But what makes a rhombus different than a general parallelogram is the fact that all the side lengths are the same. So I'm going to mark both sides of my angle this length. Now I need to reconstruct that angle. So bring this in a little bit, mark to produce the angle that I want, bring it up, and reconstruct that same arc. Of course, measure the distances between those two contact points, and then set that same length. Now put my ray in here, going from the first contact point to that next one. Now if I reproduce line segment CD on that new ray, I will get a side length that is congruent to the original, and all I have to do now is connect that length to its congruent length down below, and I have a rhombus where all 4 of my side lengths are congruent to the original side length of CD. This is how we do it from free form when we just have side lengths, but what if we're working inside of other shapes? we're going to create next a rectangle inside of a circle. And if I ever start with a circle, or start with a shape and put a circle around it, it's called circumscribe. If I ever start with a circle and put a shape inside, it's called inscribing. So I'm going to inscribe a rectangle inside of this circle. So to do that, the thing with rectangles is that their diagonals are congruent. So I'm going to create two congruent diagonals by making two diameters on this circle. There's my first, and here is my second. With those two congruent diagonals, all I have to do is connect their points of intersection on the circle, and once I do that, the opposing sides will be parallel and everything will be respectively congruent. That's the nicer and more friendly one. Now let's do it for a square. And of course, the difference between a rectangle and a square, not only are the diagonals congruent, but they also are perpendicular to each other. So to do this, what I'm going to do is create my first diagonal, and then from that I'm going to create a perpendicular bisector. So grabbing my compass, making sure it is at least over half the distance across, bring it down and mark below and above where I need to make that perpendicular bisector. Then do it from the other side, mark below and above. Then if I create a line through those 2 points, I will have a perpendicular bisector of my original. Now connecting the points on the edge of this circle from those 2 diagonals that were made will give me a square inside of my circle. So here I made it with lines. Of course, it can be done with line segments as well, but that is our construction. So this covers our items inside. There's a couple of things also we can do by combining circles. Let's take a look at those real fast. So the idea of a circle, or the definition of a circle, is that it's all points that are equidistant from a common center. So if I use A and B here to be my 2 centers, I can create 2 different circles. I can grab my compass, move it over to A, start to mark out a circle. In fact, let's just do the whole thing. And then move over to B, and if I change the length of my circle and go to mark it out, my 2 circles will contact places. These circles have different radii, so from the contact point, or from the center to those contact points of the circles, will be different sizes. If I then connect those contact points to those centers, it will allow me to create a shape that has 2 sets of adjacent side lengths. And shape with 2 adjacent side lengths is a kite. So this is producing a kite by the overlapping of 2 circles. Now if we combine the idea of a kite with a parallelogram, we'll be able to make a rhombus. So how can I do a rhombus in the same manner? Well, starting from my 2 centers again, I go to construct my circles, but this time what I'm going to do with my circles is make them both the same size. So instead of doing a full circle, I'm just going to do a partial here, bringing over and setting for the other side. If I then connect these, I will have all my side lengths the same, and working towards those 2 centers of the circle, the shape that I will create from this is a rhombus. So here, all my side lengths are the same, but my angles necessarily are not. So I have now constructed a rhombus. So rhombuses, Parallelograms, rectangles, squares, and kites can all be constructed using a straight edge and compass. Go back, review the procedures, copy down notes to be able to have them so we can construct these when we need them.